Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday edition. We do these frequently. We missed last week, but we've been doing these frequently at 8:30 p.m. Wednesday evening, trying to do them week by week. And I'm Rich Pertel, chair of the Libertarian Party of New York Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. Got a full panel of guests tonight, more than we would usually have, but let's see how we manage and try to keep this still under an hour like we do every week. And let's start with who will speak first, Assemblyman Brian Manktelow. And he's for District 130, and Jim Dayton is one of the constituents. And thank you to Jim for getting Brian to agree to come on this evening. And he will go up first to discuss A2681. Then we'll follow up with Anthony Golly with Sheets and Bailey Associates. I believe the firm's out of Liverpool, correct?
That's right.
Yep. So he'll be third, and James Sacco in the upper corner is out of the Vestal area as a private attorney. We'll have him up second. So these two gentlemen will hit some issues with A2681 and OSHA as well. And the rest of us amateurs, we're not lawyers. Tim O'Connor, who ran for New York State Senate 51 last year. Thomas Queter, who ran for Senate 52. Jim Dayton, who's an active libertarian in his area, and Michael Vasquez, political commentator, the dragon of the Southern Tier, right? The Binghamton area. He's on as well. Welcome him aboard. So the rest of us will be jumping in and out here, and then I will probably not talk a whole lot tonight, given it's a big panel, and I'll try to do a lot of the behind-the-scenes management of all the comments coming in. Hopefully, we get a lot of good comments. People, if they have things to say, questions to ask, please shoot them in. And without further ado, let's get started with Assemblyman Manktelow.
One of the things that we constantly emphasize in Albany is the majority side seems to think that employers are bad. And we keep saying they're not bad.
Before we go further, and I know Jim's about to speak, and then Anthony to address some of the more legal questions on this, I want to ask a question. I have a lot of items I want to speak about later as well, but Assemblyman, when you were on the floor, and this bill was being debated, a very simple question would be, did those in favor of this bill provide any medical or scientific evidence or reports that support the conclusions they make here, or did they just say, this seems to be the best idea, we're going with it?
Yeah, I think what we see in Albany is you get a special interest group or a group of employees that feel like they've been wronged, or they're putting in a bad position, especially with COVID. And the legislator listens to those individuals, and then he or she crafts a piece of legislation like this. And they really don't listen to anybody. They listen to the small group, and they want to act on it quickly because, as we all know, whenever you have a situation, never waste a crisis. And we're seeing so many pieces of legislation being brought forward that I don't know how any business or any entity can keep up with this in New York State.
I'd like to jump in for a second because there have been a lot of things that have been highlighted so far that are very, very important. And I hope people will be looking at this from my own review of this, because it's not just that this is a bad law, it's impractical. It is not possible to actually make this happen, because if we're going by the definition of A2681, which was passed on May 5th, as far as I can tell, Section 1, Item E, it's impractical because this is the flu. What we're talking about is the flu. And when the flu season comes around, all of these things we're speaking about must be implemented. It's beyond impractical because it also, I believe, has a Fourth Amendment and HIPAA violation. Jim and Anthony may be able to answer this better, because of the health screenings that are now going to be required, at whose cost we don't know. And this is going to reveal what information to employers that are required to now have that. There's a problem inherent in that on so many levels. And there is no exception throughout the entire bill that I could find that says that if you have a pre-existing medical condition, then, and which would preclude you from either wearing a mask or being able to get in certain vaccines or to take certain medical actions, well, then how does that affect that employee or that employer? There is no answer on that. It is completely vague and missing, which is a vital component. which we're seeing now with people who are getting the vaccines or not getting vaccines and being required to have vaccine passports, and yet they, by their own medical history, cannot. And now they're supposed to reveal their personal medical histories. There's a problem here. Going into Section 1EH, has anyone considered the cost of air filtration? And Rich, I know you know something about this. Imagine every small business owner, every building owner in New York State that is now required to change every one of their air filtration systems, regardless of the cost of those systems, regardless of the air quality in that arena, to be able to filter out viruses that we and any airborne illnesses that we don't even know about yet. That is an astronomical cost that is not represented by having an equivalent health indicator. How about Section 3, Item 4B? This is targeted towards unions. This is partisan. It states in there directly that they're looking at unions, and to create this law on an individual business basis, because government has stepped out of this, then it's saying that we have to have unions as a first preference and employees as a second preference to decide what kind of implementation of laws about medical situations must be implemented. I'm sorry, I don't have a doctorate in any medical field. Why am I being consulted on how to address a infectious airborne disease? And how is it possible if my employer says, no, Mike, I don't like your answer. Now I have a responsibility, and according to this bill, I have the process to now penalize this business up to $200 per day in some cases, and that could destroy that business. This bill includes a requirement to limit the number of customers that are able to be in this business and to disperse the employees through social distancing at any time that any kind of airborne disease, which means the flu, is in place. This is a disruption of business and regular business practices. This is a problem. And then we have to look at Section 8D. I'm mentioning this because no one ever gets to hear what section, what part of the bill. I want people to be able to look this up for themselves. Section 8D it's an unreasonable option here where it allows people to say, well, the flu is now going around. I don't want to go to work. And you can. It now removes your ability to have a steady and consistent workforce. This is a problem. Finally, there's Section 2, Item F, which is reducing the customers. So when we look at this in total, the one thing that I keep saying is that Assemblyman Manktelow, excuse me, got my teeth mixed up there. While you made some very good observations and you've made a good challenge, there has been a directed, singular, unilateral vision that empowers government. It grows government. It disenfranchises and nullifies the actual public. And whether that was intentional or not, that is its effect, and it destroys business at the time that we are trying to recover from a recession that is deepening. We have yet to reach the bottom, at a time where we haven't even considered the consequences, such as the growth of overdoses, which have reached an all-time high with 81,000 at the end of last year. We're talking about domestic abuse at all-time high records at this moment. It has been since March of 2020. We're talking about depression at record highs that we've never seen. Suicide at record levels. At one point, there were more people in Japan that committed suicide because of the depression of the lockdowns, and we see that in the United States as well, than the number of people who actually contracted COVID, not died, contracted COVID. So when we look at this bill is an example of an overreach of government without having any idea of what the consequences are, without considering any of the science that is involved, and absolutely discounting both the individual and the businesses that have to comply with this monstrous, confused document that is now law in this state. And if I have misunderstood that, if I have misrepresented that, we have two lawyers and an assemblyman, please correct me, but I think I caught it right.
Ooh.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
I am not a lawyer or an assemblyman, but I love what you said and how you said it.
Is anybody here surprised that New York State government grew its power and punished its economy?
No, but I have a question for you, Assemblyman. Did anyone put together a proposal or a projection saying how much this would cost the average small, mid, or large size business? Did they have a projection of how much pass-through cost would now be inflicted upon consumers who have to pay for, as an example, a new HVAC air conditioning system that is supposed to be able to filter out viruses at facilities that are open air or available to the public? Has anyone figured out or even guessed at how much this might cost and how long it would take to implement?
Nope, absolutely not. Because again, they don't care about the cost. They don't care about the business. They don't care about the employer. A lot of the members on the majority side feel that employers should pay for everything, that they can absorb every single cost we want to throw at them. And we continually press that point on the floor, off the floor. And what I'm going to do with Ms. Reyes is I'm going to meet with her and go through this, because I've listened to you tonight, all of you, and you've made up some really good points about the things I've already read. But I'm going to give you my word that I will sit down with her, and I'm going to go through this with her and just tell her exactly what's happening in our area and what's happening to our businesses. Because, no, they just don't care. They think the businesses will always be there.
I have to wonder, how is it possible that we have members of our assembly and our state senate that are putting through laws that literally in 44 minutes, we have gone through both from a legal aspect, a political aspect, and the legislative process has so many flaws and so many loopholes and so many vagaries that it is functionally not only just it's impractical and it's absolutely ineffective. And the only thing that we can see as a conclusion, and I would love to hear from the proponents of this to counter this, but that is going to harm our communities and individuals due to the taxes and the costs from businesses and pass through, while providing zero protection other than, hey, we're the government, we are here to help you, which has always affected a net loss to everyone. And we are the example for the nation. New York and California are the testing ground of these hyper cradle to grave government covering ideologies. And if it continues here, we will see this implemented across the nation, and it will have a negative impact, not just in New York State, but this will harm every other state as it gets pushed through, as long as people do not stop and say, it's neither effective nor is it practical. Why are we doing it? That is the message I would send to Governor Cuomo and Assemblyman, if you can pass it on to your fellow members, because I would love to hear their response.
But I think we still continue to fight from the bottom up.
Actually, Assemblyman, on that thought, let me ask you a very important question.
Sure.
Whenever we run into any kind of new legislation, and we can see that's going to be bad, the best time to stop it is before it is implemented. Because once something is implemented, whether it's at the state level or federal level, it never goes away. It only grows larger, it only becomes more costly, it only becomes more inefficient and more ineffective. That is just a fact of government. We've seen that for 50 years in my lifetime and long before that. So the best way we can remove this, I would think, would be a repeal. How can people who are watching this, who are listening to this, can reach out to you, and maybe there are others that you could name, or a process that we can say, please stop this before you go further. You're harming us. we support removing this bill or defunding this bill, or what would be the proper process?
Well, I think we can, of course, you can write the governor's office, and you can send all sorts of emails and letters. Probably won't accomplish a whole lot. They'll just take a look at them. But if you look at the co-sponsors and sponsors of this bill, all this information on how to contact them is available. And we come out and ask them, look, we need to repeal this bill, we need to amend this bill. And that's something I'll talk to our legal staff down in Albany on Monday and see what else we can do from the minority side to help our people back home. And they're very good at doing what they do. They're very good about bringing these bills out at the last minute, so we don't have a lot of time to prepare and debate and get the message out to the people that we represent. This is what they do. So we have 2 more weeks of session, and session will be done for this year, or supposedly. So we have 2 weeks to really act on any of this. But in the off season, we need to continue to push our values. And then this is what I tell people that want to move out of the state. Please don't. I love our state. I love New York State. I don't like our government right now in New York State, but we have a beautiful state, a beautiful country, and a beautiful area. It's worth fighting for, and I will never give up, and that's what it's about. So my job, from my perspective, is I'll reach out to these members and try to bring some of them up here to see our way of life and what it's about. So those are just some of my ideas and some of my thoughts. And that's what people can do. Contact these legislators and tell them how unhappy you are with this.
So before I ask it, I want to thank particularly, because this question is going to be for the lawyers, and we're going to see how they handle it. But Mr. Manktelow, I appreciate you being here. Mr. Vasquez, I've enjoyed your broadcast. I saw you on Larry Sharp. I met you at Spike Cohen's event down in Binghamton, and I think you're a great guy. You're a great voice for liberty. I know you're a conservative, but I think in your heart you're really a libertarian, and we'll get you there.
Michael hears that every time I see him.
Yes, absolutely, man. I love that guy. He's great. So a question for the lawyer.
Any more closing thoughts out there? We'd like to close up. We're a little over an hour. I'd like to finish up in the next few minutes. Anyone else have any
I'm
closing
all set. I
questions or
just want
comments?
to thank everybody for being here.
Yeah. Great audience, great discussion. Michael?
Just want to say I thank you all for being here, especially you, Brian. You put up with a lot that's not directed at you, but directed at the system and the process. And I thank you for hearing our voices on that. I want to thank Jim and Anthony. You guys have some great insight, and you made the legal something that's understandable to people, because usually it isn't. And I just want to thank everyone for having the opportunity to speak with the public and say, hey, we need to be more aware and we need to take action, support the people like Brian who are supporting us, and let's make sure we support the people who are bringing this to us in all the different formats, paying attention and saying, yeah, I'm aware. Things only happen when they're not aware, and we can stop this.
Yeah, to Michael's point, to everyone out there who's listening, who is concerned, maybe you own a business, on the Senate and Assembly websites, and I think Brian will back me up here, you can look up their votes. You can see what your senator and your assemblyman voted for, and you can vote them out.